would like to briefly talk about IHMR University and the School of Development Studies. IHMR University is a top management university specialized in research, postgraduate education, and training in health sector and development sector. The university offers MBA Rural Management, Pharmaceutical Management, Hospital and Health Management, and also offer MPH Masters in Public Health in collaboration with Johns Hopkins University. Recently, the university got 65 position in NIRF ranking 2020 by Ministry of HRD. Since its inception, IHMR University has conducted more than 800 research studies on various development issues and have created a cadre of more than 14,000 professionals who have been contributing at various policy and program level nationally and globally. Under IHMR University, SDS has been focusing on various development issues through teaching and research, and is dedicated to provide a learning ecosystem to the students to develop themselves and contribute to the development sector, and has been leading various government initiatives and working on various issues like rural livelihood, working under corporate social responsibilities, NGOs. And we have been offering various specialization, and one of the core issues, core subject the SDS has been focusing over the years is education. So today's webinar, is focusing on school education. How at this time of crisis and emergency, what are the challenges and opportunities available for sustaining school education? So I would just like to briefly give a background of this webinar. As we all know that COVID-19 has brought unprecedented challenges in India, and this has one of the sector which is severely affected is school education and access of children to the school education, especially marginalized children. This crisis has huge disruption, has caused huge disruption in access to school education, and India's response to COVID-19 of sustaining school education has not proved to be very inclusive. So it is evident by the fact that majority of the children in India have no access to the internet, online education, and other platform. There are so many challenges, and we cannot forget a recent incident happened in Kerala where a 14 years daughter of a Dalit wage earners killed herself because she was unable to attend the school education because of lack of online internet and online platform. So there are so many questions, so many challenges before us, which what happened with the majority of children having no access to internet, and also are we excluding the excluded already through the current strategies, and do we need to think critically about children who are marginalized, about their education, learning environment? So there are so many issues we are going to discuss today. Now I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Bharat Kumar Nayak. Sir, most welcome to this webinar and discussion. And also Rakesh Tiwari ji from Azim Premji Foundation. Mr. Bharat has more than 19 years of experience, and he has worked in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Philippines, and Syria for improving access to equitable quality education and protection of child rights. He has worked with Save the Children, Azim Premji Foundation, Nandi Foundation, Seva Mandir, and several international organizations for strengthening school education and advocacy, policy advocacy. So welcome you, sir, to this webinar. We also have Mr. Rakesh Tiwari, who has been working as lead with Azim Premji Foundation and guiding various education intervention and policy research. Azim Premji Foundation is a non-profit organization aiming at strengthening elementary education in India through advocacy, research, and demonstrating best practices. Mr. Rakesh has wide range of experience in promoting innovations, pedagogical processes, and inclusive classroom learning and capacity building of educators and teachers in Rajasthan. And he has also worked on with Sarabhai Community Science Center Ahmedabad and worked towards science education and innovation method. We welcome you, Mr. Rakesh Tiwari ji, for this in this webinar. A very warm welcome to both our panelists. Now, without wasting time, I would like to request Bharat ji to please highlight what are the global networking standards are there for education in emergency. Over to you, Bharat ji.
Thank you so much for thank you, Dr. Ratna. I would like to really thanks to IHMR for conducting such kind of discussion around education. And I would like to highlight some of the issues around emergency. So before going to that, I will say, when we talk about the emergency, it means that sometimes it's a natural disaster or sometimes man-made disaster, such as like war, unrest, or economic crisis. And sometimes the country are also facing the both kind of challenges together. In that situation, like why we should have continued education, because education is considered as a life-saving and life-sustaining activity. During the COVID, we have experienced that many of the communities especially have to allocate a lot of resources on awareness raising, and education is one of the means which really support us to communicate to the larger community. That's why we focus on continue education during the emergency period as well, and education also is the right of the child, so we need to continue during the emergency or in the normal situation. And it is also crucial in terms of the cognitive development of the children. That's why we're supposed to continue during the emergency situation. And also, like when any kind of disaster or any kind of emergency happens, there are like most vulnerable are the childrens. And if they are not engaged in such kind of activities, their learnings, then they are supposed to be responsible of the exploitation of response of the risk they have. For example, like girls also, especially in the marginalized community, they prefer to get engaged or marriage earlier because of the crisis. They could not afford the expenses. That is what the experience I'm sharing from the Afghanistan and Syrian conflicts. So my experience are mostly focusing on the sector education emergency as well as education development context.
Okay. Meanwhile, Mr. Bharat joined us. Rakesh ji, I would like to request you to kindly highlight what kind of education advocacy strategies means you have been working on, and what do you suggest about in this situation in COVID-19 situation? What could be the strategy after means for reopening of the schools and capacity building of teachers and educators? What do you think? Can you please highlight?
So this has been an unprecedented situation. If you, my voice is clear, right?
Yeah, clear.
Okay. So if you see the entire population presently who is facing this crisis are confused, and many don't know how to react to this situation. So going by I'll come to what foundation does and what are the areas on which it focus upon. So first of all, I'll bring about the points which is relevant to this COVID crisis. So if you see the entire scenario, we might have seen a lot of news related to the reverse migration of population from bigger cities to their villages. The children have accompanied them. There has been a severe loss of livelihood, a serious economic hardship that has a lot of population has to battle through. A lot of people have lost their job, and in the midst of it, if we focus on education, it has to be dealt very differently in this situation. So first of all, if you see that there has been a lot of advisories which has been issued by government regarding the opening of schools. First of all, they are presently battling with organizing the board examinations, and next comes the higher education that they will open. But it is very important to understand at this point of time that the children are completely are not able to make much sense what happening around them. They're afraid. They have seen their parents losing livelihood. They have seen their parents difficulty to earn bread for their family. So it's very important that as the school open up, the teacher need to understand how they can give support to the psychological and the emotional need that the children require immediately as the school reopens. It's also very important because if you see that we don't know exactly when the school will open, but as soon as the school open, it is very obvious that it will be a truncated year. That means we'll have a shorter academic year. So in this duration, it's very important that teacher and the education body of the state need to reorganize the curriculum, shorten the syllabus, and so that the overall learning stress is low in this truncated year, as well as teachers should be organized in a better way, need to be trained in a better way to support children emotionally and psychologically. So this is one aspect of it. Second, if you come to what Azim Premji Foundation does, Azim Premji works towards quality of education for the government education system. And presently we're working in 6 states. I will focus on Rajasthan. So in Rajasthan, we are working in 11 districts, mostly in southwestern of Rajasthan. And other than Tonk and Jaipur, we have presence there as well. And we work towards capacity building of teachers. We work on the policy advocacy issues. We are working towards various research areas where which can be from where we can take informed decisions and we can advocate it for the policy inclusion. So these are some of the areas that we are presently working. We can address later on the specific questions that may come up. Thank you, Ratna.
Rakesh, you have rightly pointed out that ensuring a learning environment is very, very important, especially post-COVID situation. When I started my career with Seva Mandir, I used to work with tribal schools and drop out tribal children. When we used to work, there was and used to observe the classrooms in tribal areas. There was a kind of social interaction between children and teachers. It's not about teaching, it's all about the social interaction that is going on within the classroom among peers and between teachers, the pedagogical process. There are a lot of things besides teaching. So what do you think? Do you think the teachers will be able to ensure that kind of will be able to establish that kind of relation with the students after this situation?
So see, there are various aspects that we need to focus upon before going to this point. One is, first of all, it is very important that the teachers makes a connect with the children, because the overall rhythm of learning has been devastated. So if I say, how do we feel while working from home, and not for 1 or 2 days, which was somewhere we had imagined to work from home would be a good experience. But when you are already at home for 3 4 months and you are very much confined within home, the whole rhythm of your work, your learning space get devastated. So as soon as the children comes up, it's very important that the teacher need to make connect. So the entire school processes need to be calibrated. Calibrated in what sense? Is that how do you develop more space for the children to open up in the morning assembly, in the midday meal space, in the interaction with children to teachers, and with between peer to peer, that is children to children. So all these aspects need to be focused upon, and how can we ensure that in all these places, the teachers being less authoritative and giving more space for children to open up, to discuss about issues and their immediate concerns that haunts them, that are hindrance towards bringing them to the rhythm of learning. I think all these aspects need to be seen very closely, and it's very important that the overall education system need to be sensitized, because if you see today, the entire debate is on online learning, on engineering the curriculum so that better learning happens in a short duration. Nobody talks about the emotional and the psychological need of children. So I think this is very important to sensitize the entire government system, the entire education system, and the teachers as well to focus upon it, so that they do not immediately tend to jump upon the curriculum and syllabus to complete. So this is one area I think which if they focus upon, I think they will be able to achieve the connect. The teachers will be able to connect with the kids.
Thank you so much, Rakesh ji. One very important, question is always there in my mind, because when I interact with my students, when I interact with the alumni, there are several issues like rural livelihoods, corporate social responsibilities, gender. So many issues are there. Uh, Most of our alumni have been working, but I think when we talk about education, I feel there is huge opportunities to work in this sector. Uh, when we talk about school education, elementary education, right to education, or national policy on education, and also the implementation challenges. So, what do you think? What kind of opportunities are available for the young generation, so that they could, they are committed, but they need some direction. They should work on to strengthen the education system in India. So, what could be the possibilities?
First, I will discuss about the challenges. I think it will immediately connect to the requirement of an organization.
Yeah.
So I think I can address your question in a better way once I discuss that what are the kind of people that organization like us need. So, for example, we regularly do a lot of interviews because we require a lot of people as an organization. So, first of all, is the readiness to work in this sector, the commitment to work in this sector, and the commitment for social change. It is very important. Now, as soon as the students who have a degree, who has a relevant degree, or who want to contribute, the next important step that they need to decide is all this development work doesn't happen in well-to-developed place and well-developed place, like doesn't happen in metros, like it will not happen in it is not much required in Delhi or Mumbai. It's more required in place like Sirohi. It's more required in place like Pratapgarh, Dungarpur. So when the human development index is say far behind the average. So the readiness to stay in those places for longer duration and the commitment to work with the geographical hardship that those places will offer is one thing that a person need to determine. Second, it is very important. See, when we commit to work in this sector, we have some kind of social theories in our mind, being from social sector background, being from MSW, or many other like sustainable development areas. It is very important that we have a deep understanding on the ground level realities. So like if you have the theories in your mind, how do you have a keen eyes to see what is going on in the field? And how do you connect the theory and the practice part that you are able to visualize and able to see some coherence or correlation? There will definitely be some dissonances. Like you have thought about a particular theory, you read about a particular theory, and you see that it's not working in a similar way. That is somewhere one of the thing that we often encounter in social theory. So it is very important that we have a mental preparedness, a readiness to, and a long-term commitment to work in this sector. So this is one requirement. And if you see the social sector space, there's a huge need for trained professionals. There are many organizations. There are many organizations which are both international as well as in India. The Company Act, the CSR Act, which has come, has boosted the CSR funding a lot. So there is a huge opportunity. The one thing that they need is the level of commitment, having a keen eyes, having a readiness to connect the theory that they have learned and the practice, and a level of and some level of understanding that they're able to connect to the ground reality. So I think if these are parameters are fulfilled, you are fit for any organization where you are seeking to, where you have planned to work or want to get into an organization of your mind. These are some of the basic criteria that I could highlight. Yeah.
Rakesh,
Hello.
because yeah, Bharat, I think Bharat, you are there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It
So,
was
so
when we are talking about the online education. This is the real example of having the difficulties to connect. So how do we
yeah.
expect for the children and the school education to be
Yeah, we
fully
must
online?
accept this reality that less than 50% children have access to online education. We ourselves face a lot of difficulties. So,
Yeah.
Bharat, we were just
So
talking
Dr.
about,
Ratna, you were talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
if I understand, you were talking about the no, the opportunity in working in the education sectors.
yes,
So
yes. What,
adding to the what Rakesh has mentioned about the commitment to work and I would say like in terms of the humanitarian work, education in emergency has an enormous opportunity to work even within the country or the across the the globe. So the student or even like those who the professional would like to make a career in that, as I was sharing, maybe you might not hear about the UN mandate to work on the humanitarian, response plan for each countries, and they have the like enormous funding on this sector as well, because education is considered as a life-saving and life-sustaining, part. So that's why they have the dedicated funding for the various countries. So they have the education cannot wait is one of the global window which every year they support to the countries where the natural and the man-made disasters are there. So they are focusing on the children, those cannot wait for the education for more than 30 days. So it means like within the 30 days there should be some educational activity should start in the any countries where the children are facing the difficulties. So it thinks means if those who would like to make the career in educational sector, there is a lot of opportunity, like the UNICEF and Save the Children is the globally co-lead for education sector. It means they are coordinating all this response for the humanitarian work wherever the emergency happens in terms of the education activities. So yeah, there are a lot of opportunities around.
yeah. One question with you, because Bharatji, you were there at as an advisor to the global level committees for with the Ministry of Education in other countries as well. So, what is your experience? Are these global standard and global networks? When we talk about local context, so do you think there are challenges in implementing those standards and policies at the local level, especially when we talk about the marginalized communities in India? So, what is your opinion about that?
Definitely, like my mostly worked in India for almost 13 years, so, and out of India for more than 6 years. So I mean that I have realized that there are huge gap between policies and the standards which are even you can say the international or the adopted by the particular countries or the adopted by the particular state. So there is a huge gaps in terms of first we can talk about the access to education for all groups of the children. That is the big challenge. Still, we are not overcoming from those. As you know, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan from 2001 to 11 was focused on access. Then we are focusing more on the quality aspect, but access is still there is a huge gap. And when we talk about the quality of education, obviously there are huge gap into that in terms of teachers' capacity, in terms of infrastructures, in terms of learning material, in terms of quality of learning materials. So there are a lot of other things. No? Yeah. Thanks.
What are the what solutions our government or the policymakers, what is their attitude? Maybe Rakesh ji might be able to focus on in terms of Rajasthan state government's policy perspective. Could you please share, Rakesh ji?
Can you please repeat your question, please?
Yeah, there are certainly Bharatji has been talking about the challenges, about policy and implementation gap. When we talk about quality education, learning environment for the children, and access to quality education, there are always some gap in policy implementation. So, in context of this crisis which we have been facing, what is the attitude of the government? What kind of efforts they are planning, what kind of strategies they have been talking about. So just a reflection from you.
So, see, government has done a commendable job, especially the teachers. you'd be happy to know that more than 70% of the teachers in many of the districts were
Rakesh, I'm not able to hear you. Could you please speak loudly, please?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's clear now.
Yeah, it is clear.
So many of the teachers, almost 60 to 70% of the teachers were engaged in screening, in quarantine areas, and in overall crisis management uh, in various districts. So I think these teachers, when we were comfortably staying at home, these teachers were actually providing screening. Were already fighting this COVID crisis on field. Secondly, I think from policy perspective, we will see various things that will happen in next 2 3 months. Like we will be able to see a lot of reverse migration from metros to villages. So this is the one thing that will happen. Secondly, if you see 2018 data, there were around 38% children who were enrolled in private schools, and mostly in the low-cost private schools. So as many of the parents of those children who are enrolled in private schools have lost their livelihood, we will see a huge reverse migration from these private schools back to government schools. So this is the second area that the policy need to address. Third, I think basically the higher education, the dropout cases will increase, would definitely increase, because even studying in higher education in government school involves cost, and these grown-up children, as the parents are already facing hardships, I think these children will be dropped out and will be engaged in day-to-day labor to earn bread for the family. So these are the three areas that we'd see some immediate crisis. So from the policy perspective, if the government can focus on these three areas, where how can there be a more incentive or kind of scholarship to protect the children in the higher education in the government, maybe the teachers and the head teachers can work as a bridge where they can just moderate this facility to the most needed, identify the children who requires this facility. Second, as soon as the enrollment, as I say that a lot of reverse migration will happen from private to government schools, it is very important how this new population of children who are coming to the government schools, the teacher instill trust in them, because they moved out, because they had low confidence in the government schools, and there are other aspects of like a social status as well. Mera bacha private school mein padhta hai. So it's very important now that the teachers establish confidence in the community and the children that government schools are places where good education can be provided, and the overall the education system can work in this area. This is the second area. And the third area that which has been advocated for a long time, but it's still to happen, how the teacher can play a role of a counselor, where they can give enough support to children in terms of psychological and emotional needs that they would require. So I think these are some of the areas that would require immediate attention. And the other area, I think, the education system, it has somewhere the education at the lower level, for example, up at panchayat level, is more reactive to government directives. Yeah, the order will flow from the chief district education officer, it will go to block education officer, and the panchayat education officer will implement it. I think now the system, the smaller units need to become more independent, because they need to take immediate calls. They need to see the immediate things that require to be addressed. So how can we make the local units, that is the panchayat level school units, more autonomous? How can we give more autonomy to the policy level? I think these few areas can be addressed to the policy level in the immediate days to come. Thank you.
Yeah, very important point you have highlighted, Rakesh, that is psychological support to the children at the time of stress, at the time of crisis. So, a teacher has to play a very important role in this, and there are several capacity building and training programs for the teachers. I think pre-COVID-19 situation, we had a lot of challenges in training and capacity building of teachers. But now in this situation, what do you suggest? What kind of training and capacity building programs for the teachers should be there? What kind of the skills new? Is there any new skills they need, or what do you think? Your mic is muted, I think, Rakesh.
Yeah. So your question has two components. One is the skill that is required, and what are the areas that
Yes.
require attention in terms of capacity building. So first of all, I think it's very important to realize that this year will not be the same as the previous years and the next year to come. There has to be a lot of customized things that the teachers need to offer, or the education system need to offer as a whole. First of all is a shrinked curriculum because of the truncated academic year. So how do they engineer the syllabus so that they are able to meet the learning outcome of the children uh, in this short duration of academic? This would be one area. Second, I think in terms of capacity building, it is very important.
Your voice is not clear, Rakesh. Could you please?
Yeah.
Yes, it is clear now.
So the second, could you hear the initial point I mentioned? Okay, I'll go on.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So the second, so what I said that in this small shortened academic year, it's very important how do they engineer the syllabus and the curriculum so that they're able to meet the learning outcome of the children. Second, it is very important that how do they bring the children to the rhythm of learning, because children are out of school since March. Schools are in lockdown. We still don't know when the school will reopen. Maybe another 2-3 months, maybe another couple of more months required. So how do we bring the children to the rhythm of learning? And third, when they come to the school, can we do a kind of run a kind of bridge course? Bridge course means, because since there has been a learning gap for a long time, they are not in the rhythm of learning. How do we bring the children to the skills they already acquired in schools in the previous years, and then build upon those skills so that they're able to meet the learning outcome or learning objective for the present standard they are studying? So I think if the overall capacity building of teachers focus on these areas, that how do they achieve the learning outcome in this truncated year, I think this could be one area to focus upon. And the second point I obviously mentioned, that how to focus on the other areas of psychological and emotional need of the children. So more as a role of a counselor. So these two aspects, I think, would be fair enough to start with.
Bharatji would like to reflect on this issue. Okay, there are certain questions from the participants. I think very important questions they have been asking, and you could, there is one question: how online method means online digital education system. How could the digital education system, how it is possible to encourage creativity among the students if we promote digital education or online education? What kind of issues are there with this?
If you ask me, I would say, it's very difficult to support children who can keep their creativities, and we can encourage child to be more creative through the online education system, because it's very difficult for the teachers also to support each and every child those are connected with the online learning. So I would say it's not really feasible option for the children's creativity.
So, Rakesh here. So I think it's very important to understand the scenario of our country related to digital. First of all, a recent study which was published by Pew Research Center in 2018 said that around 15% of the rural population has internet access, compared to 42% in the urban space. And you can see the challenges in the beginning itself. Second, there is no digital learning can never be a substitute to face-to-face interaction that happens, because it's very important. If any learning to happen has to be guided through various steps, various interactions, environment, which a digital platform can never provide. But definitely, if it can supplement the face-to-face interaction process. For example, if something happens in the classroom and the rest of the assignments and other things follows through digital learning, it can very well supplement in that thing. But I think complementing it or us using it as a substitute to face learning, it's not a good choice. And especially as you've seen that the access to internet is very challenging, it raises a very serious issue of equity and equality of access to learning. So this is, I think, one of the major challenges and issue as well.
Okay. Rakesh and Bharatji, a very important issue. I think the latest draft over National Education Policy 2019, there are, it talks about, policy will need to situate equity and inclusion and diversity. The policy talking about diversity. And in the classroom, we have a lot of issues related to local dialects, language, curriculum, translation, and several other issues. So, how could we address all these challenges, after this situation?
So I think it's a big basket. So where to respond? I think if you give us some specific areas on which we can respond, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah. Actually, if I talk about when we used to visit classroom, there are so many children from different social backgrounds. They have different languages. And teacher always find it difficult to deal with those children in the classroom. क्योंकि पढ़ाना है एक ही भाषा में पढ़ाना है एक one standard, one pedagogy. So after this situation, when the schools reopens, what kind of classroom structure should be there? What kind of inclusiveness should be there in the classroom? When we have to make inclusive classroom, what could be the strategies for making classroom more more inclusive and learning for those who are basically from the from the disadvantaged category. So what are opportunities for learning for those children in the classroom? Am I clear? Should I repeat?
Yeah. Your question is clear. Bharat, would you like to respond to this?
Actually, maybe earlier Rakesh might have discussed about what need to be done after the COVID crisis over.
We are not able to hear you, Bharatji, I think.
Hello, can you hear me now?
There is some problem.
Hello.
No, Ratnaji, I think the problem is at your end. We are able to hear Bharat clearly.
Really?
Hello?
Okay.
Rakesh may like to reflect on this.
Is it not audible?
Yeah, Bharat.
Rakesh, are you able to hear me?
Yeah. So Bharat was saying something, Ratnaji.
Yeah, okay. So I was saying something. Is it like about when we are talking? Hello, maybe Ratna is not able to hear. Maybe other.
Hello.
Rakesh, you can continue. Otherwise, maybe.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Ratnaji.
Yeah, Rakesh.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think your mic is muted.
No, it's not.
No. I think it's problem with your side, maybe. So in terms of teachers need to be, equipped with the upcoming challenges. For example, like the labor or the community, those who are out of the areas, means like from the natives, and now we have seen like a lot of migration happen towards the village or towards their native places. No? So the schools and teachers should understand the children those are coming from the different background, from the urban or the slum areas,
Hello.
because earlier they might. Hello, Rakesh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Bharat, but I don't know whether they are able to hear or not. I'm able to hear you clearly.
Okay. I'm not sure whether others are able to hear or not. So let me continue. So I mean that teachers should be equipped with understanding the children's needs from the various background, because previously they might be having the limited number of children from the same surrounding or communities, but after this crisis there might be the many families those who are returned to the home.
Maybe there is some problem at my end. I would like to request both our panelists to kindly, there are several questions related to, from our new aspirants who are willing to work in this sector. So what key messages would you like to share with them? And what kind of, although Rakesh ji has highlighted the skills required to work in this sector, I would request Bharat ji also to, share some key messages and challenges and opportunities, because some of the aspirants want to know more about that.
So I was talking about, like, when the school will reopen, teachers has to be understand and aware about the various group of the children. There might be some additional children those are coming from the urban or the slum areas after this crisis, so they have to be more sensitive and try to understand with them. And then also, as you mentioning about some of the challenges around the language also. So obviously there might be the issue around the language barriers for the childrens that need to be, we can have the normally, like, the teachers is also from the same surrounding areas, or might be near the nearby areas. So how so far we have been addressing this issue through hiring a local volunteer or local teachers to support the government teachers in understanding the children's language, and playing of the, bridging the gap between children and the teachers. Maybe Rakesh, you could also add some of the elements which need to be addressed after the reopening of the schools.
So I think Ratna asked a following question, which you can repeat, because that was the initial question that you responded. Shall we reconnect, Bharat? Would it help?
I would like to ask a question. I'm not able to hear right. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but just a small question. When we talk about convergence of different departments, in education sector also we need a lot of convergence. So what do you think? What kind of convergence is required to make to ensure that education, for sustaining education at this time? And after this situation, post-COVID situation, what kind of convergence is required?
So I think Bharat is on mute. Bharat, are you able to hear it?
No, I am able to hear. I think Ratna
Okay.
has a problem. We can continue with the discussion. Maybe because
So
the
Ratna
audience
has
also.
just, yeah, I'll just repeat the question, Bharat, which Ratna asked. Did you hear it about the convergence of different departments? So on the question of convergence of various departments, I think it's very important to understand what comes under the ambit of education. Firstly, primarily the children. So basically, if you see the structure, that children below the age of 6, so before the primary education begins, they are part of the Anganwadi. So they go to Anganwadi, where a lot of education begins from there itself. Early childhood education, basically, if you see. So how can we better integrate the early childhood education into the core education? That is, for example, if a class, if upper primary school campus has class 1 to 8, why not the Anganwadi shift to this school itself, so that the children who are doing preschooling are able to do the formal schooling till class 8 in the same premise. This will also ensure a better integration of the Anganwadi activities with the formal education that they require in the upper classes. So this is just one example of integration. Second, I think if you see the other areas, that teachers are involved in a lot of other activities, like basic survey that happens on animals, on election duties, on some are BLOs, booth level officers. So and the instruction, and sometimes the census of trees as well, the teachers that need to do. So many interdepartmental communication happen at the same time to the teachers, which definitely makes the teachers' active presence in school suffer or affect the active presence of teachers in the school. Because even after being present in the school, he is doing various other activities from the different departments, which is required to be done by the teacher. So the effective interaction between teachers and students reduces, and overall teachers often discuss about it, or often crib about it, that they are not able to give time. So how can they manage it better? And can there be a calendar?
I'm very much thankful to Bharatji and Rakeshji for sharing valuable insights on most pressing issues of education at the time of crisis. The point you have highlighted helped us to generate so many research questions, and we hope to continue subsequent discussions with you on these issues and subjects. And STS would like to seek more support from you to guide our students who are willing to work in this sector. So thank you so much, Bharatji and Rakeshji, for joining us this discussion, and we would like to continue this discussion with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.